Yes, I'm Richard Powell. I work for the Forestry Commission, but I'm also a landowner, feed producer, and forester at a small scale. But nevertheless, I'm kind of doing it for real as well as advising others on it, which kind of feels good after all these years. I'm going to talk about trees and the role of trees and woodlands in nature recovery in the Tees Valley. I'm obviously speaking in this slot, which is focused on the environmental aspects of sustainable development, but equally I could have delivered this presentation in economic or more socially focused sessions, I think, because I think it's really important to recognise that trees are, or certainly can be, multifunctional, delivering against social, economic and environmental benefits. I'm going to start with a little bit of national level policy and then bring things down to the particular opportunities that I think exist in the Tees Valley and the particular challenges and the particular ingredients that we have in the Tees Valley that makes it, I think, a very good place to plant some significant areas of woodland. And I would challenge Jeremy at least slightly on woodland creation not being easy. I know exactly what Jeremy meant in terms of getting the right trees in the right place for the right reason. But hopefully, over the next year or so, it will get easier. It is going to get better funded, and it is going to get more strongly supported by society as a whole. If it doesn't, we're not doing our job. So the England Tree Action Plan, it was launched just a month ago today, in fact, on the 18th of May. I just want to run through some of the highlights because it's a very significant document. It builds on the 25-year environment plan, but obviously is specifically about trees, and by trees I mean trees, woodlands, forestry, forest products, the whole thing. It provides an ambitious long-term vision for trees and the treescape of England to 2050 and beyond. But as well as that long-term vision, there are 80, believe it or not, 80 specific policy actions to be delivered this Parliament. Think 3 or 4 planting seasons. And I'm going to talk more about some of those in a few moments. But a little bit more about the document itself first. 5 chapters. Woodland creation is, I think, in many ways the thing that people are most excited about, the thing that people most closely focus on. But it's not just about that. You know, it's about protecting and improving our existing trees and woodlands, not least from the array of tree pests and diseases that we're now having to deal with. And it's also about connecting people with trees and woodlands, particularly important in areas of relatively high population density, such as the Tees Valley. The specific actions, I think, can be boiled down. It's a fairly long document with 80 policy actions, as I said. But with respect to woodland creation, I've boiled it down to just 5 here. 6, I can't count, to 6 here. Okay, the headline that caught the press's attention was this ambition to treble the rates of woodland creation in England by the end of this Parliament. So, as I said, we've got 3 or 4 planting seasons to increase the rate of woodland creation in England from its current level, which is about 2,500 hectares, to about 7,500 hectares. The government are saying at least 7,500 hectares and have provided us with the funding to begin that process. And the funding is significant. The lion's share of the £640 million Nature for Climate Fund budget that you might remember the Chancellor announcing almost 2 years ago now is for trees and woodlands. So £500 million has been earmarked for trees and woodlands. And that's essentially about woodland creation. There's a tiny little bit of woodland management money going into that, but woodland management we're dealing with through other funding as a kind of business as usual. The vast bulk of this new resource is for woodland creation. And the reason, I hope it goes without saying, but the reason that government is putting so much money into this is because it's an important component of carbon sequestration strategy, which obviously is all about combating climate change. So significant investment, building on the recommendations of the climate change panel for the kind of land use change that we begin to need to see to help contribute towards the nation's efforts to tackle climate change. That's the top level policy driver behind much of this. However, it's not just that. It's not just that. It's also about nature recovery because, of course, I don't need to tell this audience, we're faced with the twin challenges of a climate crisis and a nature crisis. And I'm going to argue, as you'd expect, that trees are very well placed to deliver against both of those things. So just to highlight some of these, I won't go through the whole list. We've already launched the new England Woodland Creation Offer. We did that last Wednesday. We've already extended the Urban Tree Challenge Fund, and we've already launched the Local Authority Treescape Fund. I don't know if there's been any applications from the Tees Valley, but I am familiar.
Sorry, Richard, your slides aren't progressing.
No, but I'm talking to this one slide at the moment, the key government announcements.
Oh, well, that's not come up for us. So.
Oh my goodness! Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I am sharing my slides, and I have clicked through the first 3 or 4. I don't know why that is.
No. That's up now, but it's up kind of small, if you know what I mean.
It's obviously not working on slideshow mode for some reason. Okay, well, I've talked about that.
Yeah. Okay.
I've talked about that.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about that. I'm sorry. I think I'm going to have to do it as I am. I apologise. I obviously couldn't tell that you couldn't see my slides advancing. So anyway, they're the key elements in the England Tree Plan, in the England Tree Action Plan with respect to the woodland creation ambition of government. I'm going to focus for the rest of the time, though, at the North East and more specifically at Tees Valley. So significant resource behind delivering a very ambitious programme. That's the kind of headline. The Forestry Commission and Natural England are growing, and I've given you a few examples of how we're growing in this slide. So, for example, my team, Yorkshire and the North East, we've grown by about 50% in terms of staff numbers this last year, and there's more growth in the pipeline, subject to favourable spending review next year. Natural England are also recruiting. They're currently taking on 2 new advisors to focus on the woodland creation side of things to support us, I suppose, in ensuring we get the right trees in the right place in terms of not planting on habitat that's already valuable. Although we've recruited a whole team of new ecologists to help with that as well. Forestry England are coming to the party. Not buying land, but leasing land, normally on a kind of 60-year or 120-year lease option, interested in parcels greater than 50 hectares. So retiring farmers and the like are thinking seriously about that in the North East currently. That group, new team, incidentally, is chaired by Jim Lee, my colleague who was the Forestry Commission's land agent in the Northern England, in the North Forest District. And also, you might have heard a little bit about this, Great Northumberland Forest, DEFRA initiative with a view to seeing a significant increase in woodland cover in Northumberland. And as I mentioned earlier, or as I featured on the slide earlier, growth in the community forest movement again. And I was part of a team yesterday bidding to the national panel to make the North East Community Forest one of those that's going to be receiving Nature for Climate Fund. So a new or a refreshed, because those with long memories will remember the Great North Forest, a refreshed North East Community Forest, hopefully. we'll get the outcome of our bid in the next few weeks. So in the remaining time, I just want to focus specifically on Tees Valley. Hopefully what you're picking up from what I'm saying is it's a very exciting time for trees. But so what? So what for the Tees Valley? What does that mean for us here in the Tees Valley? Well, 2 points of principle I would make here, based on my experience and that of many of our colleagues. It's got to be about social, economic, and environmental, if whatever we're doing is to be truly sustainable and long lasting. Point 1. Point 2, it's really important that we work with landowners, we support them, we provide them with appropriate advice, the right kind of support at the right time. After all, it's the landowners, the land managers that will deliver what we want to see delivered. It's not going to be government directly, by and large. It's not going to be a wildlife trust. It's not going to be a Natural England. It's mainly, very mainly, going to be those private landowners. So why is Tees Valley such a good place to be getting in on the Act? And in on the Act, I mean, why is it such a good place for significant increase in woodland creation? Well, it kind of feels quite urban and industrial, doesn't it? But as James reminded us this morning, 54% of the Tees Valley is farmland, and 80%, at least, of total farm income is based on some form of government payment, and those payments are changing. We know BPS is going. It's beginning to decline from the autumn, and it will be gone entirely by 2027, as I understand it. We're getting environmental land management scheme and sustainable farming incentive as part of that coming in at the end of this parliament. But as Ben pointed out this morning, there's a bit of a gap between the start of the decline in BPS and the full introduction of sustainable farming incentive. And at the same time, of course, we've got this pressure, this huge time pressure to get stuck in and get stuff happening now with respect to mitigating climate change. And that's partly a gap that's being filled by the England tree planting programme. As I said, we've got the money to spend over the next few years before the end of this parliament. We need to integrate agriculture and forestry, and we really need to be thinking about better ways to manage land that captures more carbon, conserves soil and water, and supports nature recovery. It's not actually very difficult to do that, and a lot of farmers are doing it pretty well now. But there's also a lot that need a little bit more guidance, need a bit more help, need a little bit more funding, need to see some demo projects, need a bit more support. But as I say here, it's very definitely not about forestry or nature. It's very definitely not about farming or nature. You can have it all. With good planning, careful management, careful siting of this stuff, it's quite possible to have it all. So growing more food locally in a sustainable, nature-friendly way, and growing more of the timber and biofuel we need for sustainable construction and renewable energy to tackle climate change is all perfectly possible, and it's all perfectly possible in the Tees Valley to do at pace and at scale. There's a huge industrial legacy, expertise and resource potential, of course, from Teesside itself. And I remember many years ago negotiating with Semcorp over the supply of 30,000 tonnes a year of wood fuel. There's going to be more markets like that and more creative uses, local uses for wood. And of course, we've got the legacy of the Cleveland Community Forest. And I'm going to talk very quickly in the remaining bit of time about that.
Couple of minutes, then, Richard, yeah?
Yeah. I can do it in a minute. So I just wanted to get away from the text a minute and to get us a little bit immersed in nature in terms of a local example of what we've done, more of which I think would be very welcome and is is very possible in the current financial and environmental landscape is more community forestry. And Cotham Wood, that I hope many of you are familiar with, I remember being involved with the original design over 20 years ago. The picture on the left was taken just after the first planting. You can't really see any trees other than those that were already in the landscape. And the picture on the right was taken by one of my colleagues just a couple of weeks ago. And I think this is a screenshot from Forestry England's website. It's I think a really good example of something that combines delivery of considerable biodiversity benefits and delivers a sustainable long-term timber crop and delivers improved water environment, all in the same forest, all at the same time, all by planning and managing carefully. And one could also integrate, of course, with this significant food production. And that's the kind of thing we want farmers and other land managers to get involved with in the Tees Valley. Thank you.